Hello everyone!
Morning. Morning.
Do we have here? No. So my name is Val Nesterov. I'm currently working for Albert Heijn. It's my client basically, but I'm former employee of the SciTech. Working with the SciTech for the last 5 years. So the topic of today's talk gonna be the modern SEO-friendly frontends. And this is me, and this is kind of my experience. This is my 2 Pomeranians, so I'm just a proud owner of them. And this is the clients and the companies with whom I've been working in the last 5 years, like the same time which I live here in Netherlands. And as you can see, we have companies like TMG, Albert Heijn, Marktplaats, and all these companies, they are e-commerce companies for whom it's important to have a nice and good traffic, because at the end it leads to their good revenue, sorry. So let's start from here, like what's the SEO? So basically the SEO itself is just like a set of their best practices which allows the websites to be in the higher position on the search results page of the engine. Why is SEO important? As you can see here, it's called like click rate. So the websites which has the okay, so sorry, a bit shaking now. So the first search results gets over a quarter of the clicks on their search results page, and the second search results gets 15%, and then goes significantly dropping to the bottom of the search result page. And that's why it's important to have your page on the top of it. As you can see here, we have this page. This is actually their search engine result page, and nowadays it consists out of the 2 blocks, for example, for the Google, from their paid and organic results. We are not interested in their paid because it's just promoted, you can buy this advertisement, but we are gonna focus on the organic one. So their organic search results, it's unpaid, as I mentioned, and this is from where you would like to see your traffic is coming, because then it means if you're gonna use different keywords, your page is gonna still be in the top 10, for example. Then with the SEO we have such thing which is a quality of organic traffic. You want to know how relevant the user and their search query are to the content that exists on your website. And you can have like Apple is one of the keywords, but maybe you're not like selling apples, like the products from the apple. You might be selling just apples as a, I don't know, just as a fruits, right? So in this case, you don't want to have the people who is coming for Apple products, but you want to see people who is coming to buy your apples. Then the third thing which we have here is quantity of the organic traffic. And this is the number of the user who reach your site via the organic results. So next one. How does it work, like SEO itself? So basically you can select 2 things here. It's the crawlers and the search engine algorithm. So when their website becoming open for the world, then the crawl starts from a known web page and follow internal links on the page. And then it just indexing the whole content which you have there, and the search engine is creates it just like puts all these indexes into his database with attaching some different keywords. And at the end, when the user types or speaks to search engine via the search box, then their complex algorithm of the search engine, she just goes through all these indexes and trying to retrieve all this relevant information. There's like 10 things which would like to optimize for SEO web design. I would say like top 10 things, because there's more than 200 factors, which is Google takes into account when they are trying to rank your page on the website. And the most important, I would say, is mobile friendliness, website speed, sitemaps, readability, image file names, alt text, website navigation, URL structure, metadata, and the indexable content. It's fine, but like you would never think about like that alt text, for example, will be somehow affect your ranking or the images file names. But at the end, Google just trying to get all the information what he can get from your website, and by having their proper naming for even like images, it will improve your ranking. So I'm not gonna go deeper into all these things, but instead of it, I just gonna focus on their website speed. So if you want to get on the good side of the Google's algorithm, your website needs to be SEO optimized but also user friendly, and users want a site that loads fast. So 40% of the users are likely to abandon a site if it doesn't load within the 3 seconds. And that's why here's the things which can affect your page speed. It's like web hosting, file sizes, plugins, code inscription, traffic volume. So when you're building the website, you need all the time keep all these things in mind. So the Walmart case, for example, I think it was like around 6 years ago when they understood that the website is quite slow, and they decided that they need to work on the performance. And the first thing which they found that for every 1 second of improvement, they were getting up to 2% increase in their conversions. And this is huge. If you will think about it, the Walmart is not like a small grocery store, but it's just like a huge chain of the markets and states. And afterwards, for every 100 milliseconds of improvements, we've been getting like up to 1% of the revenue. And it's just like, it's crazy. Basic tools which you can use for checking how good, how well perform your website. It's Lighthouse, Page Speed, and the Google Search Console. If you're gonna like focus on extra SEO related tools, it's gonna be more, but they're gonna be more Google Search Console alike. So the Lighthouse itself, it's a tool which you can use already in your Google Chrome. It's in their DevTools. And that thing, it actually provides you only their synthetic data. So it's not like based on the real data, it's based just on their synthetic data. But this thing is why it's great, because it allows you from the beginning to understand like where can be your problem. Next thing is the page speed. Page speed is already based on their real users. And this is where you can see where's your real problem if you have it. And the Google Search Console is already has inside of it the page speed as well. And besides that, it also contains a lot of different, not even like metrics, but tools which you can use to improve your website. As you can see here on the right, we have such thing like some metrics. And this metrics called Core Web Vitals. So this is a user-centric metrics which helps to measure parameters most relevant to user experience. And nowadays, yeah, we can say you have like the 3 most important ones. It's like loading, interactivity, and visual stability. So let's go further. So what does it mean? When the page is renders, you want to make sure that page renders fast. You don't have any jumpings on the page. That all their content is already readable for user. So the first thing of all, it should be that when user comes to your website, he is coming for information, and he should be able to fetch that information from the website no matter what. Like, do you have some fancy things or not? The most important is information. And here we can focus on three, I would say, one of the most important things in this metrics. It's LCP, or largest contentful paint, then their FID, the first input delay, and their CLS is a cumulative layout sheet. So the LCP itself, it's you're gonna use this metric to ensure that it provides a good user experience. And this metric should be less than 2.5 seconds. So you can see here, or not. For this page, it's less than 2.5, you have 2 seconds, and Google already tells you, okay man, you're in the green zone, you're good to go. And based on all of it, you just like measure your performance. So I was struggling with this page a lot when I was working on it. The performance was like around 70, 60, we're trying different things, nothing was happening. And then we did like a small thing, we just like went for the HTTP2 and the score just went to the green. It was super funny. So yeah, keep in mind HTTP2 nowadays is acceptable for everyone. Okay, now we're gonna talk a bit about the rendering patterns. So as you know, there's like a lot of different rendering patterns in the web development, and this is, I would say, one of the most how to say, famous nowadays. But people usually, they are using the client-side rendering or their server-side rendering, or I don't know, server components, streaming server-side rendering, or isomorphic applications. But yeah, let's go for all of them. Not for all of them, but just like a few of them, sorry. So let's start from the client-side rendering. So what you can see here is how or what you would expect from their browser to render your page, and what kind of metrics are going to be affected by doing the client-side rendering. So we have here like FP, which is a first paint, FCP, which is the first contentful paint, and TTI, which is a time to interaction. And when the browser fetches your page as is client-side rendering, you will create a bundle of JavaScript, which will just like do everything for you, like fetch information, render all the text, all the content, and this is where we have some good and bad things for it, because like one of the best things why people went for it, I think like when Angular came out 7 years ago or something like this, that was like, oh wow, it's gonna be the same experience with users I can get in the applications. But at the end, people realized actually it's not that great for the SEO, and people are suffering because of it, because at that time search engines, they were not optimized for JavaScript at all. It's nowadays, some crawlers, they understood that they can wait for time until the JavaScript will be loaded, and then there are some content will appear, but it's still a downside of it even nowadays, because if you have like a huge bundle which can take a lot of time to be fetched from the server side, you will also need some time to fetch the data, and in this case it can be that the content which appear on the website will not be visible for a crawler, because crawler just like, oh, here's nothing, so I'm gonna go further, and just like, why don't have any traffic here? Yeah, so when you taking the client-side rendering, you need to remember, first of all, SEO considerations, then the performance, code maintainability, and data fetching. So why is the code maintainability? Because it's hard to split the business and their, yeah, it's hard to split the business logic basically, because you have only one SPA where all the data, all the business logic is located. And yeah, with the data fetching, depending on the size of the data which you need to load from the server side, it also can increase the time in which you will get some content there. Second one, server-side rendering. I think this is like from where we started our journey back in the days, like when everything was server-side rendering at first, and then people, they just went crazy with this client-side rendering, and it was fun. But this is the thing which we still use nowadays, even with the new modern frameworks. We just like, okay, this is something what we actually need. And the good things about their server-side rendering is that their connect and fetch operations are handled on the server side, but not like in the client side you have the fetch on the client side. And HTML, which is required with all the content, it's also already generated on their server side. So SSR will help you to avoid the round trips for data fetching, for example, but at the same time it can be that you will need to roll out the whole page because of some actions. One good thing about server-side rendering, that it provides you ability to add some small bundles, or not even small bundles of JavaScript within the page, and then you're gonna have your interactability by this JavaScript. And this is, I would say, where all these modern frameworks as in Next.js and in Nuxt or libraries went. They're just providing you isomorphic applications, which is kind of like server-side rendering applications with the JavaScript in the future. Not in the future, but afterwards. So here's some pros and cons which I probably forgot to mention. It's like provides additional budget for client-side JavaScript, and this is a great thing. This is what I just mentioned. So yeah, users just you can get your content, and then it will be available, and then you're gonna have some time for JavaScript. But the downside of it, okay, forgot to mention, that since all the content is rendered on the server side, that means that most likely you will need to wait longer time for fetching this information compared to the client side. So that's why the FCP will increase with the TTI, most likely. Yeah, let's go further. Streaming server rendering. This is something new. It's something what you could find with the Node 16, if I remember correctly. This is a pattern, not the pattern, this is a functionality which was provided by the Node 16 at least. So we can use stream to render to stream of a function, which allows you to basically, in small chunks, start serving the HTML to the client side. And this is great because in this case you don't need to wait until the whole page will be shipped to the client, and the client can start fetching it like by small chunks, and that's why at the end you're gonna have all the information faster. Yeah. What their pros and cons? So the first of all, performance. It's way better compared like to their server-side rendering, and the first byte reaches the client soon after rendering starts on the server, and the TTFB, it's like time to first byte, is better than the full SSR, and their first paint within their first contentful paint are also lower, and this is a great thing. Then their handling of the back pressure. So basically, if you have some network back pressure or concatenation, it will you will get results faster compared to the server-side rendering, even like you have some challenging conditions. And you also have like SEO as a bonus here, because it's a server-side rendering still. One of the things you can think about with the server-side rendering streams is that when you're building these kind of applications and you have a rich applications and you have, for example, a heavy client side as well, you can actually play around all these different chunks, and instead of loading like a whole bunch of it, you can say, okay guys, I want this thing to be rendered first, and then when it will be rendered, I want to lazy load that component and make it appear on the website. So you actually no need, as with the server-side rendering, to load all the JavaScript at once. You can just hydrate or lazy load some small scripts of it. Okay, this is something new. It's called selective hydration, and this is what is gonna appear in React 18. It's still in beta, I think. It's not released yet. So some smart guys, they went for their RCP or whatever, and they realized that nowadays you can do one cool thing. If you can combine pipe to node stream, it's another thing from their I think Node 18 already, using the create root and the suspense, then it makes possible to start streaming HTML without having to wait for the large components to be ready. And selective hydration makes it possible to already hydrate the components that were sent to the client. And the components can be hydrated as soon as they stream to the client. So you don't need to wait until the whole, you don't need to wait for the hydration until the whole client side will be shipped to the client, and you can do it faster, way faster. And this is probably the aspect on which I want to stay a bit longer. It's islands architecture. So if you take a look here, like on the right side we have, or for your left side, you're gonna have SSR when all the components rendered and hydrated in the same time. Then you have progressive hydration, when you can ship like one by one, but at the end it's again the same. You're gonna render all the components but in a faster way, and you still will need to hydrate them. But the islands architecture, it provides you something different. It's encourage small focus chunks of their interactivity within the server-side web pages. And what does it mean? It means that instead of just like shipping the whole thing of the client scripts, you're gonna just ship small ones to hydrate only those small islands which are needed. So all these, as you can see, like for example for SSR, all the data is kind of static. And then with the progressive hydration, you can hydrate one component by one. But here you can say, okay, I don't need like all this data, all this JavaScript for anything on the page except the filter apps and the carousel app, because all the rest is static. And it's pretty handy to use when you have blog posts or I don't know, e-commerce websites within the cart. So for example, you can have Alberheim page, right, with the products. And then you can decide what kind of products are gonna be there, static or gonna be dynamic. Okay, might be using the Alberheim is a bit bad example because they have a lot of interactivity. But for example, at Marketplace, when you have this page which you visit where you do bindings, where you want to buy some product, then you have almost everything is static, except a couple of things, like a few buttons, carousel, header, that's it. All the rest is static. Because you have their characteristics of the object, you have description there, you have title there, and you don't need to fetch all this information over and over again. It's just like render it once, done. You don't need to touch it anymore. Yeah.
Just a question, but do you render it then on the server side?
Yeah.
And just ship it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is a cool thing, because then you can think about, okay, I might actually can combine this thing with a server-side streaming, and then it's gonna be way faster, because yeah. So one smart guy by the name Jason, I forgot for whom he's been working, he actually kind of defined this ILS architecture definition, and afterwards he came up with some requirements for the frameworks, which will define that the framework is a compliance with ILS architecture. So the requirements itself is that it should support the static rendering of the page on the server side with zero JavaScript. Then it should support embed of independent dynamic components via placeholders. So if you're gonna think about the React, it's gonna be suspense, for example. And each dynamic component, it should contain script to regenerate itself. And it also should allow the morphic rendering of components on the server side with the iteration of the client. So yes, two things they're quite similar. Nowadays we have, like, I would say production ready these three frameworks, which is Marco, Astro, and Elementary with the Preact. It's like three approaches which were tested. So the Marco itself is open source framework developed by the eBay, and it was in the beginning developed in the way to improve the server-side rendering performance. So it supports ILS architecture by combining streaming rendering with automatic partial iteration. Then you have Astro, and the Astro is mostly a static builder. You probably could heard about it if you're from the developer. It's called Astro Build nowadays. And the Astro provides you ability to, it's probably only one framework was built with in mind of all these framework requirements. So all the components that need client-side JavaScript are loaded individually with their dependencies. And the Elementary plus Preact is something what had the predate the definition of the ILS. Yeah. So the one thing about the Astro, it's a great thing, great technology. But what you can usually face as a problem for their island architecture is the way how you're gonna share the state between the different small applications. Because let's say all these islands, they actually are small applications. And in case if you need to share some state, you need to allow these components to communicate somehow between each other. And this is where it makes it more complicated. So Astro is actually library agnostic free, so it doesn't depend like on their Vue or React or Angular, so you can use any of these with Astro. And Astro, they provide their own solution for managing their state. It's in their documentations. It's basically some kind of local storage but the local storage is more like a JavaScript library which provides you storage with some connections for which you can just tell all the rest small applications to talk via from. Oh, stopped. Okay. So there's like there's the things which can be pros and cons here. So the performance is usually great. SEO is usually great as well because you have all the content ready for you from the beginning as it's statically rendered or server-side rendered. By doing this, you also should keep in mind what their content is most important for your page, basically, because you can have a lot of different things on the website on their, like which user will see in the future when the page will be rendered. But not all of this content is actually important, for example, for the crawlers. And here where it's like a place where you should play around what kind of information should be rendered for the crawlers and for the users as the first thing, and what can be actually delayed for their later on. Like for example, with the mark class, what we had, we just like, okay, we now need their binding blocks at the beginning, so we can just lazy load it. So less information gonna come from the server side in the beginning, and user can wait, because the most important that user will see what the actual article which he want to buy, what's the description, what's the content. Yeah, so I would say that the content here is especially important for the blogs, articles, product pages. That's really summary. So the summary, what can I say, that when you're building their SEO-friendly front ends, keep in mind that you always need the quality content, and the page should have a super nice user experience. It should be mobile first, all the time nowadays, because I think around 90 or 70% of the users, they're coming to your website from their mobile devices. Then always define the app design based on the business needs. So what does it mean? That if you want to use server-side rendering or the client-side rendering, might be in one case client-side rendering will be a great thing for you, because you don't need to server-side anything. And pay attention to the core web vitals, because this is a place from where you can start your journey and from where you can see like what kind of things you can improve for your website. Yeah, so here you can find some resources where you can read more about all the different things. And thank you.